Let me tell you something they never teach doctors in medical school. Hospitals don't sleep, they just pretend to. I learned that during my night shifts at Riverside General, a hospital so clean on the surface that you would never imagine what happens after midnight. My name is Michael Reeves. I'm an ER doctor, and I've pronounced more people dead than I can remember, but one patient refused to stay dead. It was a Tuesday night, and the clock above the trauma bay read 1:47 a.m. That time matters. You'll understand why. The ER door slammed open as paramedics rushed in a man on a gurney, mid-30s, muscular, covered in blood, a gunshot wound to the abdomen. No wallet, no phone, no dog tags, just blood and silence. I asked the paramedic what happened, but he didn't answer, and that should have been my first warning. We cut his clothes off quickly, and that's when I saw it. Burned into his chest, not tattooed or written, but scarred into the skin like branding iron damage. For words, property of U.S. Armed Forces. I froze, because this wasn't normal and it wasn't legal, but doctors are trained to ignore feelings and follow vitals. And his vitals were crashing. We rushed him into surgery, blood pressure dropped, oxygen levels fell, and then the heart monitor screamed. Flatline. No pulse, no breathing. I called the code, and we worked on him for 9 minutes, 9 minutes with nothing. At 1:58 a.m., I stepped back and said the words I had said too many times before, time of death. The room went silent, and then a sound broke the silence. One beep, one heartbeat, then another. The man inhaled sharply like someone pulled back from underwater. No shock, no medication, just alive, and you don't forget a moment like that. Within 20 minutes, 2 men arrived, not doctors and not police, dark suits, military posture, no badges. They handed my head nurse a sealed envelope and said the patient was no longer under civilian care. He argued, but they didn't raise their voices because they didn't need to. They looked at me and asked if I had pronounced him dead, and when I nodded, one of them said, "Then officially, you didn't." They took the patient toward a service elevator I had never used, and I made the worst or best decision of my life. I followed. The elevator didn't stop on any normal floor. It went down past the basement, past maintenance, past places patients never see. When the doors opened, I stepped into a hallway with concrete walls and dim lights, and a sign read Ward C, restricted. They wheeled the patient into room C12, and before the door closed, I slipped inside and asked the question that almost got me killed, asking what this place was. One man told me the patient was not mine anymore, and the other said he never was, that he was an asset. That's when the man opened his eyes, fully awake, too awake, looking directly at me and calmly telling me I shouldn't be there. His voice was steady, like someone who had already accepted dying more than once. I asked his name, and after hesitating, he said he was Captain Aaron Cole of the U.S. Army Medical Corps, emphasizing that he was, not that he was anymore. He swallowed and said they had brought him back, and when I asked what he meant, he laughed quietly and said they kill him when he remembers too much. My blood ran cold when he explained that this was reboot number 7. Aaron told me everything in fragments, that after combat deployments soldiers like him were offered a recovery program, supposedly to help with trauma, guilt, and fear, but what they were really studying was what survives death and how obedient a man becomes when you bring him back wrong. He whispered that they weren't saving soldiers. They were testing weapons that don't stay dead. Then the alarms started, security alarms. The room locked automatically. The men reached for their weapons, and Aaron smiled. And that's when I realized they were afraid of him. The lights went out. Gunshots echoed. Someone screamed, and Aaron grabbed my arm and told me to run and not look back, and I didn't. By morning, the hospital denied everything. No record of Ward C, no trauma patient, no room C-12, and the security footage was gone. I reported it, but they said I was stressed and suspended me. And then I noticed the cars outside my apartment, the silent phone calls, the feeling of being watched. One night, an email arrived with no sender and one video, showing Aaron strapped to a bed, alive but barely, telling me that if I was watching it meant they had killed him again. The file name read Project Lazarus, with the objective to create operatives immune to death, guilt, and civilian law. And that's when I understood the hospital wasn't healing people. It was rehearsing war. I leaked everything. The media laughed it off and called me unstable, and by nightfall my door was kicked in, forcing me to escape and disappear. 6 months later, I heard about another patient in another state, another gunshot wound, no ID, who flatlined for 12 minutes and then came back, and when the nurse leaned in, he whispered for her to tell Dr. Reeves that it didn't stop. If you're listening to this right now, and you work in a hospital, and someone tells you a room doesn't exist, don't ask why, just don't go inside.